You're listening to a DM podcast.
Welcome to Over the Back Fence. I'm Di Edwards.
I'm Nicola Dale, and we're buddies of nearly 4 decades. And yes, we actually do happen to share a back fence.
We do. We love parties, people, inspirational stories, and honestly, making the most out of life.
So join us as we open our hearts, share our stories, and hear from some of the most inspirational people in the world. And have a laugh along the way.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Okie dokie, diddly dee.
Diddly
It's the
diddly
start
do.
of the week. Woohoo.
Yeah, I never used to like Mondays, and now I do. I get so excited to be in the studio with my bosom buddy.
We love it. Now, you've had a bit of a week and a half. Tell everyone what's been happening.
Yeah, it's all been a bit
glasses
crazy.
on.
No, I got two styes under the lid of one of my eyes, and
Die with the sty and the eye.
that's the one. I sing. She's the poet with the
Know it.
with the know it poet. But I sort of literally, like you saw it swelled up like a golf ball, maybe even tennis ball at one stage. I couldn't drive because my eye closed over, so I've been on massive antibiotics. But you know what's fascinating is, and it's not so much bringing the good out of something so awful, is it really made me introspective. It got me down a little bit at one stage because I was literally homebound and didn't leave the house. But it was really strange. Being introspective is a really powerful thing. And I started thinking about the world, as I do. You know what I'm like. I go off on these tangents.
Your eyes are shut.
And one shut. So there was enough to see the world with a very limited vision, which I think we all have it in this world today. And I started thinking about how we all need to do our little bit. We all need to do more, not glaze over. And I started thinking about someone that you and I interviewed, Ronnie Khan from Oz Harvest, how she talked about doing little baby steps towards healing the earth. For example, the food in our fridge that we chuck out because we don't use. Oh, it's old now, chuck it. Well, that ends up in landfill and ultimately affects the earth, right?
So true.
And I just thought, God, there she is helping the homeless of this country, and she's now healing the earth. Well, guess what? We've all got to do our bit. Don't make it difficult. Like now, and all last week, anything in my fridge, I started deleting, going, no, I can push that to the side, but I might be able to use that in an omelette. I can do this. I make a stir fry out of that. So I've changed the way I operate in my home, and you too can do that.
No, Di, well, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry about the sty in the eye, Di. And I did see you a couple of times and catch up with you. And gee, I tell you what, listeners, she did. It was a shocker. It really was. Like the poor thing.
Seriously.
It was awful. But I get it. Sometimes it's a good time for self-reflection, and also what you can do for yourself when you have to sort of sit in it, and then what you can do for others. And it's a great thing with Ronnie Khan. And, we're all going to be out there supporting. I think everyone else who wants to come out, I think it's on the 7th of November.
And it's called Unite to Feed Australia.
Woohoo, at the ICC. I think there's still some tickets available. There's a great Australiana lineup, and money goes to a great cause. So that's a really great thing. Well, you did that. You missed out on. But
I know.
I went to South by Southwest.
Such a good week.
So everyone, all the international listeners, you might know it. I think it started in the States, and it's its second year out in Sydney, Australia. And it's just such a great week because it's full of inspirational speakers, and there's people from all different areas, from the arts, from IT. So I went and saw talks, and it was just sort of like, filled my soul with a whole lot of different fresh ideas and meeting new people. And it was great. And I tell you who really impressed me is Johann Hari.
Oh, my God, I'm in love with him.
Yeah, exactly. And he sort of talks about, he's got a couple of books there, Stolen Focus and Lost Connection. So it's also
Thank you for lending me the book.
Yeah, it's really good. But basically the thing is too of how we are as a kind of addicted to our phones and how it's sort of like set up that way by the people in Silicon Valley. And also then it can create a big sense of loneliness. And so Johann is a Scottish writer, is a character. He's a big TEDx speaker. He's sort of kind of well known on, globally really. But look, he was great. I saw Whipper, who's coming on. So a lot of these guests.
Nicola would have been hovering at the back. Whipper! Over the back fence!
Well, there are a lot of them. It's great.
He's looking forward to coming on.
We're bringing it to you guys. Yeah. So it's great. I certainly got a lot out of it. We want to share it with you.
Yeah. And do you mind me just ducking back to Johann,
who
please. I'm mildly obsessed by.
Oh, good.
We
like a little bit of obsession. We've got a few of
Mildly
them.
or a lot. I'll
We've got
have
a
to
few
work
of them.
that one out. Look him up, guys. He's everywhere. But what intrigues me most is particularly, God, we're coming up, Sammy, to what, almost 80 episodes
Woohoo!
of Over the Back Fence. You and I have chatted a lot about loneliness and how it's the greatest problem in our society today. You were mentioning then mobile phones.
Yeah, that's right.
There's many contributing factors to it. But again, back to my introspection, I can't help but think with this powerful medium of podcasting and our beautiful friends who listen in to us each week.
I know, and we're grateful for that.
We are very eternally grateful. But I'm wondering if, like, Nicola and I, because we have talked about this, I'm not just throwing this at her now, but about how we can help to tackle loneliness. We're getting involved more and more in the community, but if you could DM us also and say the ways that you might help in your community and how you assist those that maybe your neighbour, you go and drop some milk over or whatever you do, and we'll read it out in our potty.
Absolutely. Let us know your ways. Like I was mentioning even last week how I went to that Groundswell Gala Ball, and that was for loneliness. And it really is now, it's a really big thing. It's really Di and I, it's sort of becoming a real sort of forefront in our jam of
you
things
looked after
too,
me,
isn't
for example. I was all alone.
Yeah, and you felt
and
it.
seeing friends, how vital, also as you age, how vital friendship and also sisters and family, whatever. But, Nicola was there, all the time, every day. There was this beautiful, happy little butterfly called Nicola Dale, who was, how's my dada, how's the ai, or whatever, and I'd have a smile on my face. It's as much as a text, a phone call, dropping something over, picking someone up, we're going. It's quite simple, but we've all got to start doing it. And I know I might sound a bit firm, but it's essential.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Well, Diney, I'm glad you're back. You're
I've
looking
really
pretty
had a bit
good,
of a mouthful, haven't I?
Well,
You can tell I've been at home alone for 5 days. But it's introspection's healthy at times.
Yeah, so guys, DM us and shoot. We've got a fantastic guest coming right on up. Woohoo! Well, Diney, excited because joining us today is the fabulous Tottie Goldsmith.
She's not feeling fabulous. She's got a hangover, actually.
Oh, don't. We're oversharing.
She never drinks.
No,
normally.
but let me go here because I think people will know. But Tottie,
I'll explain.
Tottie was known as Melbourne's it girl. Tottie, she rocked in the 80s with the cool band the Chantoozies. Woo! She lit up our stage and screen with so many shows such as The Young Doctors, Neighbours, the Sex Life series. I want to hear more about that. Woohoo! Calendar Girls, and recently in 2022 was in a celebrity Get Me Out of Here. She's a proud mum. She's a marriage celebrant. She's the niece of our beloved Olivia Newton-John, an OAM recipient for the incredible contributions to arts and community. And as it turns out, Tottie and I have a bit in common. So we're so excited for this chat. Tottie, welcome to the back fence.
Yay,
Oh, it's good
Tottie.
to finally be here.
Yeah, you're a busy girl.
Now we're not sitting around a table in Rome together.
Rome.
We're
I know.
actually sitting around the table that we
great.
talked about sitting around.
That was a fabulous dinner we
How
had.
wild was that, though?
With
Running
your
into
new
you
beautiful
two
man, Tim.
with Tim.
And Nickers and I in Rome under the stars. It was
No, but
so
how about the way
romantic.
that we went into each other?
I know. You know
Oh,
what
that
it
was
is?
weird.
That was
It's
so
incredible.
That was serendipitous.
Because,
Wasn't it?
putting it back that, Tottie and I, we're Melbourne girls, and
Yes.
our paths had crossed, a few years back, backstage, I think, at a John Stevens concert.
That's where I first met you.
That's it, when we first... And instantly we both liked one another. It was just one of those things. And then, anyhow, so we knew we were going to meet up in Rome. Di and I just come off a cruise ship, and we're going out to dinner with you and Tim that night.
Yeah.
And you know how busy Rome is. And I'd said to Di, I said, you know what? I've got a feeling. I said, I'm actually going
She actually did say that.
to Tottie today in one of the busiest cities in the world.
And mind you, it was the busiest time of the year in Europe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
July,
right. Yeah, it was
summer.
nuts.
And here we are. I just bought the Gucci bag for my
Yep.
gorgeous girlfriends. And we're walking in this
Fabulous.
side street. And all of a sudden, this side street, there was no one else.
And there was
in
no
there.
one.
Not one person.
And then, Tottie, what happened?
Well, then
so
I'm
random.
like lost. I'm trying to find this certain shop and my Wi-Fi wasn't working. And then I look up and there's these two women walking towards me with hats and glasses on. And then
Looking hot, you meant to say.
looking hot.
I was
Chic,
literally
baby.
hot, sweaty hot.
And then I hear
Nicola.
Toddy. I'm like, yes.
Oh, wow.
And then these
So
two
weird.
took their glasses off. I'm like, bullshit.
Wow.
And then we
It's just
walked toward,
weird.
it's like that was crazy because
A
I was
sliding
looking
doors
for,
moment.
it was sliding doors.
Yeah, in
Oh,
every-
Yeah.
every
And I
sense of
did.
the
I said,
word.
you know what,
Yeah.
Tottie, I knew I was going to see you today, and then
You
I
did.
just shared that with you. I said, I
Yeah.
actually had said to Di this morning, I'm going to bump into you before our dinner, and then we ended up having the most
Hey,
fabulous
isn't that
dinner.
random, Sam?
best
Seriously.
dinner.
I think I said
Yeah.
to Nicola, yeah.
And Tim was like, what did we
Bingo.
call him? He was Charlie's Angels.
That's right.
We're a little old for that, but we like to run with that.
Exactly.
So
That's
we're
right.
surrounded
Speaking of
Tim.
Tim, your
Yeah.
new man, Nicola and I interviewed Tim Olsen last year. It's an absolute, authentic to the core,
Son of the brush.
magnificent
Tune in, listen.
episode. It was last year, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Most beautiful human, and this exquisite woman is dating him, and it's like a heart's around you both. What I loved, he was very
He is.
transparent, he was very authentic, and those sort of interviews are pure gold.
Absolutely.
Because,
Yeah.
we all have the facade that we build
Yeah.
in life, you know what it's like. We all just do that. Where he's at in his life, I think is probably the best he's ever been, and you meet him.
Yeah, it's very, well, I met him years ago through Deborah Lee. So Deborah
Wow.
Lee, Finesse,
Yes.
slash Jackman, slash Finesse.
Yes.
She has a lot to do with adoption awareness. And she said to me, it would mean so much to me if you came up, it was at Catalina up here. And so I brought along one of my best friends, Antonia, and went there, and Eloise, a group of us.
Beautiful women.
And beautiful women, and Tim was there. So that was
Wow.
probably 12 years ago.
Oh,
That was our
no.
first connection. And I remember
Wow.
standing near a bar, standing along a bar, just having a chat to him, thinking, what an interesting man.
Oh, he's a beautiful human.
But
He
the
really
timing,
is.
it's about timing.
Everything in
And when
life.
did you
timing.
reconnect again?
We sort of connected a little bit through, a social media thing.
yes, yeah.
And then we sort of got each other's numbers, then we would just chat. And he's a beautiful conversationalist, as you girls
Yeah,
know.
He's beautiful.
Sure is.
And then he was coming down to Melbourne. He was dating someone, I was dating someone. And then he was coming down to Melbourne. He said, there's an art show in Melbourne, an art fair. Would you like to come? I said, sure, why not? So I went down there and he walked me around and I said, I know nothing about art, but I know how it makes me feel. And I said, I just want to, clear this up. I'm not highly educated. I'm street educated.
Oh, go.
And I
sure.
know nothing about art. And he said, well, that's perfect. And I think because in his
Wow.
world,
It's very refreshing,
he'd be,
huh?
it's
Yes.
refreshing,
Yeah,
surrounded by
yes.
people that know a lot about art, so they drop into those really deep conversations. So he said to me, it's about how it makes you feel. And it was interesting because we
Oh, I
went
love
past something and I said, why does that make me feel like I want to move away from it? And then we stood there and talked about what it was and how art, like movies, like music, can bring you into them or repel you depending on what the energy of that is. And he's very sensitive and, as you know, he feels these kind of things. So that was our first real connection, having that conversation.
Oh, how beautiful.
I was thinking, driving and going, how do you start a conversation? And because I think the listeners want to learn a little bit more depth about who Tottie Goldsmith is. Where do you start? And I thought, okay, let's pretend I've got a Tottie Goldsmith book. It's her memoir.
Right.
And I'm opening the book. Where would I like the book to start? And I thought, let's start with your beautiful dad, who was married 5 times, was he? Or
Well,
was
the
5
last time they were
partners? With-
engaged, but then he
Yeah,
got
so
Parkinson's
5
and she
partners,
lost interest.
5 partners.
So
5
we
partners.
didn't.
8 children.
So
and
5
mum.
partners, 8 kids.
Tell
So
us-
tell us your story and weave in your upbringing. And just
How much
briefly.
time do we have? In a nutshell, because
Yes.
we've all got extraordinary lives that create the person that we are
Yeah,
through these
correct.
experiences. And I also think how we come out, our personality is, you can get 2 people having exactly the same experience and they perceive the world so differently.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
true.
So I believe that we're born with the soul, we choose our parents. So I chose pretty quirky parents. And my mother, who is Olivia's sister, Newton-John,
Newton-John,
because you
yeah.
did say that
Yes,
earlier, that
yes.
she was my aunt.
Yes.
So she was 16 when she started dating my dad. So she'd come out from England. Olivia, by that stage, if she was 16, Liv was 8.
Oh, okay. I didn't know she was
Nine.
older, right.
Yeah, my mum was
Right, I didn't know
7
that,
years
okay.
older, so I'm not
Right.
good at math. I hope that
Yeah,
worked.
yeah.
So they came out because my grandfather on the Newton-John side got a job at a university So he's got a really interesting life, my grandfather, extraordinary.
And also butting in there, wasn't your great-grandfather
He
got
was
a Nobel Prize
for physics,
How's this?
but that was through my grandmother's side.
Okay,
so the
wow.
German, he was a German Jew. He and Einstein were best friends. Einstein was nominated him for the award.
I know.
And then they were
Sam
both.
and I are like
It's
pushing
just
our
like
chins
this
back.
family.
Well,
is
just-
Don't worry.
incredible.
The IQ gene just went shoo. So
Don't think
Grind
so.
it back in like a fishing line.
Hey,
Oh, me.
what about the glamour gene? I tell you what, it's
Yeah.
certainly there.
So let's come back. So Mum,
So
you were saying
Rona,
Mum,
so
yeah,
Rona had
being
her
your
first,
mum.
so Rona being
Yeah.
my mother, she married my dad.
Yes.
In those days, they lived in Ivanhoe, which was kind of suburban in Melbourne. Now it takes 20 minutes to get there, but in those days it was kind of like the country. So she had her first child, my sister Fiona, then another one, Brett, and by the time she had me, she was 21. So she was pretty young with three
Wow.
kids. She had been a model for the likes of Helmut Newton in the UK. She'd, Benny Hill show. She wanted to be an actor, but it was really modelling was her thing. She was quite beautiful for the look at the time. She was a very different look than, how looks change.
Yeah.
So Rona actually left when I was about 2.5. And
Left to go.
she went back to England. She wanted a career.
So she left her
she left her
husband and her three children.
well, she left the three of us with Dad.
With Dad.
So
Okay.
I think that, I know that we ended up moving in with his mother, my grandmother, and around a similar time, his sister's husband left, and she had 3 kids. So we were like piled into this
Wow.
wonderful chaos. And then Dad,
Were you in contact with Mum during this time?
No,
I mean, obviously you were very young, but
she-
the other siblings?
this is where Olivia
Yeah.
was so important in our lives, because Rona, I guess, to cope, just cut off that part of the world. And
Okay.
there was no contact.
Got it.
Nothing.
That was her coping mechanism.
That was her
Yeah.
coping
Yeah.
mechanism, which
Wow.
isn't ideal. As a
No,
mother and a
not at
dog
all,
owner
but-
and a cat owner, I couldn't imagine.
No.
But people are different.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
to be very, very honest, my mother was kind of a little damaged and struck
Course.
with the narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that ability to be able to cut off emotionally. It's a trait, right?
Yes.
So Olivia being younger, and Olivia was coming, she was in Australia longer, and then with Grandma being in Melbourne and Grandpa Bryn in, it was Newcastle in those days, Liv came out a lot because of her career, and then she always had a really big sense of responsibility for making us feel loved and seen. She never understood. She could never understand it, and she was quite emotional
I'm getting
with
emotional
us.
now.
And I remember vividly being about 6 or 7 and sitting in this big armchair with kind of faded floral arms and sitting in Olivia, and she was little. Olivia's like my height, but she was very, very skinny. I remember being in her arms and her holding me so tightly, and she was crying, and I didn't
And
understand
you were a baby too.
why. But of course I understand now, because she couldn't understand that her sister had done that. So this kept going. Olivia gave my brother, sister and I all a first-class ticket in Pan Am, right?
Love
Back
this.
in the
Pan Am.
day. That's in the glamour
Wow.
days
To
of
To go and meet
flying.
our mother, do the proper meet. So when we all
So
turned
can
18,
I ask how old you all are at this stage?
18. So my sister went first.
And she...
And you hadn't seen your mum
Oh, hold
at
on.
the time.
So you all went together or you
No,
went separate?
separately.
Okay.
So when
So
Fiona
let-
turned 18, when Brett turned 18,
Okay, so when you
turned-
all turned 18, I
Yes.
love it. First class ticket, don't you love it?
And she
Pan Am?
wrote them out. I can still see her with this book, Pan Am, and handwriting tickets. So this is way before
this is-
computers.
So who paid for the ticket?
Olivia.
Oh
Olivia.
my God.
Yeah, that's
She is
beautiful.
the angel flying around you right now. So, okay, you land to meet Mum. Tell us about
Okay,
that.
so I expected,
I
I
mean-
was shooting myself,
Yeah, I
as you
don't-
could
I'm
imagine.
shooting myself.
Can I
hearing
just
it.
interject a little bit?
Yeah.
Have you had any contact with your mum during that time? So
She
left at
come out
2.5
once when
and
I
you're
was
18.
about 10 or 11, and I couldn't go near her.
Right.
And I don't know
Yes.
why I was so scared of her. She was so glamorous and so beautiful. And I watched her with my sister, and I would peek through the door watching her sitting there talking to my sister and just be fascinated.
Wow.
And I remember when I went over, when I was 18, I remember peeking through a door. I sound like a perv, don't I? Because I'd never seen what she looked like asleep, and I remember being fascinated
so
with
I'm
what she
getting
looked like asleep.
emotional again.
So
It's
anyway,
really
so I
got
get
me.
off the plane,
Look at
I'm
me.
18, I'm really nervous, and I go through, the international doors with my trolley, waiting to see her, and she wasn't there, and so I waited
no.
an hour, another hour.
Oh,
then
no, that's
I
like-
went
Are
up.
you kidding me?
Then I
It's
went up
nightmare.
onto the
She's not
street,
there.
and I'm standing at the street. I've got no American money. There's no mobile phones in those days. I didn't know what to do, but just stand there. And then it must have been another hour past. It was a long time. I hear plonker, right? And there's Olivia driving past in a limo, waving out of the back window of the limo going,
Sounds like Pretty Woman.
Do
you know what I mean?
and I'm like, oh, thank God. And so she piled me into her car.
That was her nickname she gave you.
That was my
Isn't
nickname.
that gorgeous?
Yeah, I love it.
Plonker.
I love Plonker.
Yeah. So then Liv took me up to
Tone of
her
endearment.
house up in
Right.
Malibu in the canyon, and my mother didn't come for 5 days. So she didn't want me. So,
Okay.
right?
So it was really
So-
Olivia doing all this.
Olivia
the
did
angel.
everything. And then I
Okay.
did
Why am
go
I
to
feeling
her
this? Are
house.
you feeling this? There's something
I
wrong with me.
am.
I'm feeling this
No.
so strongly.
Yeah. Well,
Ooh,
because you're
got
a
me.
woman and you can't imagine.
It's got me.
No.
It's
Oh,
just,
got me
it's
badly.
it's interesting, isn't it?
It really is. So I want to know about the meeting 5 days later.
So she comes
know
up
what
to
it is.
Livia's place. There's always people there. You know, they've got, you know, America, and they've got the maids, and there's horses in the thing, and dogs and cat and bird flying around. And Rona comes, and she couldn't look at me. And
Rona
I
being
was,
her mum.
my mother.
Yeah.
I was chubby, felt really ugly, very insecure. And I remember sitting in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet with the lid down and sitting there. And I remember rubbing the fabric on my shirt, just trying to calm myself down. I hadn't been introduced to meditation at that stage, Sam. So I think there was something in me that understood that if you do something, it can take away from your anxiety. So I guess it's the equivalent to tapping. but I
Tapping,
didn't
yes.
understand it then, right?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
So
ahead
then-
of your time, actually, Tottie. Yeah.
Mine's usually drinking champagne.
I was too
only
young
18.
for that. Yeah, no, but that's another
Drink
story.
in America.
I was raised
On
by a
America.
publican.
So, okay.
exactly.
Oh, that's a very
Nightclub.
good
We wanna
point.
get back to those good old
Brian.
days.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're feeling that's trying
So
to
then
calm me down.
I don't.
Yeah.
Rona didn't really want to take me, and I really didn't want to go. And I
Yes.
remember Liv coming and getting me,
Yep.
and I remember her
Bless
saying,
Olivia.
"You've got to go." And I'm looking at her going, "I can't go. I'm so scared. I'm so scared." And she's going, "You have to go." And she pretty much forced me to go. So my mother was driving a Porsche. I remember that, thanks to Liv, and she had a beautiful house on Outpost Drive. I was so intimidated by her, like scared shitless.
Did she hug you when she saw you?
Don't remember her hugging me. That's not a memory. I just remember the panic and
Yes.
Olivia making me sort of peeling my hands.
So was
off
it the
to-
three of you at the actual meeting then? Like
No,
with
there
the-
was Matt at the time. There was a house
The
full of people.
birds.
Okay,
She,
yes, yeah.
Rona
The
kind of
dogs, the
avoided
cats.
me.
Okay.
She
Right.
didn't really want me. She was in the worst throes of her marriage to Jeff Conaway, and Jeff Conaway played Kaniki in Greece, and he had issues with cocaine and issues with alcohol. This is no secret. I'm not saying anything.
No.
He did celebrity rehab and talked about my mother and said I got second best. I mean, so
Yeah.
my mother, when you're a bit wounded, and we all know this, what you attract
You
your
absorb it.
wounding, and until you heal it, until it comes around so many times, you go, okay, that's me repeating this.
Interesting the gifts you learn, isn't it? in
Oh,
life?
yeah.
So speaking of gifts you learn,
Yeah.
did
Jeff
it end
came-
up being something that was ultimately a good move?
I think when you lose a parent, whether they die or they leave or something, there's this deep curiosity about where you come from. And I idolised her. I pedestaled her in my mind. Because when we talked to Brian, our father, about why she left, he literally said there was a sinking boat and someone had to jump out. And when I met Rona, she shredded him and called him evil. My dad was a lot of things, but he wasn't evil. So that's the narcissist, the blame.
Yes.
So my mother was very tricky, and she exposed me to things that an 18-year-old should not be exposed to.
Oh, wow. How long did you stay with your mum, Tottie?
It was meant to be 3 weeks, and she asked me to leave after 2.
Oh, darling. So
why?
did you
Why?
share time?
Because when people came over,
I'm not
she
reading a book. No,
introduced
seriously.
me as the nanny
Turn the
of her
pages.
son Emerson, who was about 2 or 3 at the time, I think. Or she asked me to leave the house. So she hadn't told anyone about these 3 Australian children. I didn't realise that
Wow.
when Brett was there, Brett only told me this after she died, that when he was there, because he didn't know our
Is
stories.
your brother?
My brother, Brett,
Yes, yeah.
sorry.
That's it, yeah.
She said, this is my son, because she liked boys. She didn't like little girls. And she made Brett lie about his age, so it brought her age right down. But Fiona and I, we didn't
Well,
exist.
she was the full-blown
She's
narcissist, wasn't
tough.
she? To the
Yeah.
extreme.
And also
Well.
to leave 3 children isn't,
course.
Did
it's
you
not a
not
good
take
look. I ended up getting a really severe case of chronic fatigue syndrome. And when I got it in the 90s, people thought it was a yuppie illness.
It was called ME back then, wasn't it? I love chronic fatigue because it
I
describes
love chronic
but
fatigue.
No, because
Yeah, no,
a
it
girlfriend
does.
of mine
It's
had ME
chronically
and everyone's like, what the
fatigue.
hell's that? And a chronic fatigue was the term, and I went, well, it's logical because that's what it is.
Yeah.
You're tired 24/7.
But you're right, it was known as the yuppie thing. It was kind of
Yes,
dismissed a bit too, and a bit of a,
very.
bit of a thing
Yeah.
going, oh, you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Well, they thought
Whereas
it was
now-
depression,
yes,
and I
yeah.
said, well, if I'm depressed, give me something. Give me an antidepressant. I was playing Janet in the Rocky Horror Show, a role I'd always wanted to do. I'd done breakfast radio in Melbourne, and then I left to go and do the Arena of Greece, it's spectacular, and then I didn't enjoy the role. They made a role for me because I was the it girl,
Yes, you
right,
were
at
the
the
it girl.
time.
You were the it
and it was a
girl.
boring
Major.
role. They were throwing money at me, but I just didn't get any satisfaction. So I auditioned for Rocky while I'd done one lap of the country, and that was like arenas. So I auditioned on the sly for Rocky, and I got the role of Janet. So it's 3 lots of auditions.
Oh, my God.
And I didn't do the last round, and they got someone else in that was much better suited to
Yes.
Greece, and I dropped my fee by over half and had so much more fun. So I'm doing a show I'd always wanted, and at the time there was a Giardia scare in Sydney. So it was all over the news and all over the radio to wash your food properly and wash your vegetables and, don't drink tap water. And I was rigorous about it, but, one of those little bugs got in and I got Giardia. The Giardia tipped it into chronic fatigue.
Right.
So then I had 5 years of it that I didn't work, and I had
There
to
was a
sell my house
whirlwind
and take my daughter out of the
trauma
school she was
too.
in.
A whirlwind of
That's
trauma
right.
circling within you. So whatever you were doing out here, this wasn't changing.
Oh, I
Yeah.
am the perfect cover girl. I
Yeah.
will cover.
Yeah.
I also hate dumping my stuff on people.
Right.
I'd never want anyone to feel
I'm
sorry
fine.
for
See,
me. I'm
like,
really
what
proud.
are we talking about? People pleasers. So many people pleasers
But
I've met on this
I'm going to say,
body.
Tony, we're jumping from one to the
Here
other.
we
but-
are.
That's how
Tony-
women communicate.
That's
So
how we
true.
do. But
That's how we
But I've
do,
got to
yeah.
say, and we still want to go even a bit further back on some certain things
Yeah.
too, but really proud of you, Tottie, how you've done so much self-work, and you've, from having a background like that, which no one can relate to unless, they've been in your shoes. No one has been in your shoes except for you. But, you've really done a lot of the work there. You've done a lot of now
Well, I had
spiritual
to,
work,
you
and
know.
it's a really beautiful spot to see where you are.
Thanks,
and,
true.
and really, I mean that from my heart.
It's to be honoured.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
such a big payoff for doing the work.
Yeah.
It's
Isn't it?
called freedom and happiness.
Woohoo!
It's
There we
simple.
go.
Yeah.
And chronic fatigue was you get very isolated with the illness. I couldn't watch
course you
television
do.
because I couldn't tolerate light or sound, so there was no music, there was nothing, and it was really isolating. And I had to deal with not only my mother leaving and the constant rejection. When I got back after meeting my mother, 6 months later, we were held up at gunpoint at home by 2 masked men, and there was my sister and I, Dad's wife to be, our boyfriends at the time, and I was taken away by one of them and sexually assaulted by one of them. So I hadn't dealt with that either, because in my family it was like it didn't exist. My father couldn't cope with it when he
Those
got back
days,
from
don't talk
overseas.
about it. Just
don't
put it
talk
in the
about it.
cupboard,
Don't talk
close
about
the
it.
door.
Put on a brave face. So I was raised to not express, and there's also some people in the family that take up all the space of expressing themselves, and there's sort of, you feel like there's no room left for you, or you don't deserve it. That comes with abandonment. It's a self-worth thing. I don't deserve to be loved and cared for, and I'm not lovable, and that comes from rejection. It was only when I had a child that I started really doing the work. So when I had Layla, who's now 31,
It was also born
weirdly born on my
your-
birthday.
Isn't that remarkable? I've never heard that actually.
That's a gift.
Never
Do
heard
you know
That's a
what?
gift.
To me, it was more than
That's special.
it was going.
Good
That's
Lord.
you when you're little. So when she turned 3, and I knew I didn't have a mother, I went, whoa!
How
And I
powerful.
had separation anxiety when my husband Stevie took her away from me, and I had to get on top of that. I went, that's my separation anxiety. That's what that little girl went
Of
through, or the
course.
little girl in there. So that was you need to do the work on this, so
Your
you don't
moment
pass this down to
to
your
shine.
child. Because I don't want Layla feeling my anxiety. I want her to feel free and empowered in the world and independent. And so I gave her everything I craved in life, which was intimacy, deep connection, talking about everything. You're safe. Tell me everything if you need me. If you're at a party and you'd end up doing drugs, ring me. I will not judge you. I want you safe.
Lucky girl.
So, but that's when the work
Gifts of
really
growth.
began.
So
and
everything
it's
likes
hard at
timing
the
we've
beginning.
said before at the
And a
beginning of
beautiful,
this.
And
beautiful angel art.
desire.
You know, Olivia really was an angel.
she
in your-
was.
She lived near Gaia. She had this beautiful house
been
in
to
the
Gaia.
so
it's
her
beautiful.
house was
Yeah, I
a
love
10-minute
Gaia.
drive away, and it was just this beautiful home, and it was in the rainforest, and it was gorgeous. And she flew me up
Wow.
and said, "I'm going to get you well." And this was about
The angel appears
I don't know,
again.
yeah, the angel appears, and I was at my worst. Where walking across the room was just like lifting weights. Everything was so hard. So she went and got me all these tests done. In the alternate realm.
Yes.
And blood tests, and I had 13 viruses in my bloodstream, which makes sense. One virus can make you feel like shit.
Yeah.
So I had 13, so it made sense. So she did a lot of that work, and she also came into my bedroom one day, and she just was stroking my hair, and she said, your mum felt she didn't have a choice. So she was trying to heal me, and she also taught me what surrender was. She said, Plonka, surrender to this. I said, what do you mean surrender? I'm not going to give up on
Now
myself.
I've got
Totally.
this. Now I've got
Right.
this.
Good, fine.
Yeah.
I knew it would hit you because mine haven't gone down since you've started talking.
I've got it from
It's like there's
She's
someone
here.
here in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
here.
I reckon Rona is
my
too.
God. now
I'm
I've
not
got
kidding. Keep on going, Tottie.
So Liv, saying to me, I'm sick as a dog, and I was like, you're really typical, push through everything, tough. I was physically tough, emotionally tough. I never wanted to be a victim, and I will get well, and I'll do, I used to run excessively, gymnastics, dance. I was like this
Run
driven,
away from it.
Yeah, driven, overly driven. So I was the type that was going to get chronic fatigue.
Right.
So
I was waiting for you.
Right
Yeah.
for the blacking. Yeah.
So
was
she
waiting
said, no, Plonka, surrender to what is. Surrender to this illness and allow it to move through your body. And so we're sitting out in the balcony surrounded by, the beautiful rainforest, and I'm sitting there going, surrender, I need to understand this. So she kept talking to me, and I already had been meditating, so then I started bringing meditation into it about seeing it leave my body and surrendering to what is, and it was one of the greatest gifts and lessons of my life.
Right.
So she was the mother heart.
Other
Beating
hearts.
in your
because
world.
Rona couldn't be.
Yes.
She didn't have that.
No.
And it's not her fault.
No, it wasn't
so I'm
even
not
her.
playing a blame
No.
game here.
No.
Whatever happened to her created that person that she became.
So
But
true.
Olivia was very much our mother heart of my siblings and I.
Toddy, thank you for sharing that. And I think you've right now have helped so many listeners.
Yeah.
Do you reckon?
I really do.
Definitely.
I think the word
Sharing
See,
stories is
sharing
that's
stories.
why it's worth
And I
sharing
think
it.
people have a perception too, when you're out in the media, and Toddy's been out, as I said, the girl in the 80s, and I want to hear about some of those Chantoozies early days too, because they're so much fun.
Yeah.
But people do have the perception that life's just still great
Yep.
and whatever, and, you
There's an
Auntie's
image.
Olivia. Whereas, what you've gone through,
Yep.
and you're courageous enough to share it, and then also then to tell all the things that have, a lot of things that have happened, and now the gifts coming through that work. And I think for
Yeah.
everybody listening, surrender's a big one.
Against all odds, and look at them.
And then, look at her
You have
there.
a light shining through you.
Yeah.
And that's
Thank
through
you.
doing the work.
But I also have a happy disposition.
Yeah,
Yes,
love
you
that.
do.
came out.
You can
Positive
see it.
You know,
I
I-
You're
For
very
me-
grounded too, to
Yeah.
me. Your energy's very grounded.
I am grounded,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
work on that. I take
Yeah.
my shoes off when I go to the park. I have a
Yeah.
grounding sheet in my bed. I bought Tim a grounding mat,
Oh,
which I made him pull out yesterday.
Lucky Tim.
It's not
I
going
know,
to
lucky Tim,
ground you
exactly.
stuck in a fucking cupboard.
Yes.
So you let us swear on this show. I just did. Sorry.
You can
Sorry,
say
Sam.
anything.
You can say
Tony.
anything.
I've got a botty
It all
mouth
goes.
sometimes.
Yeah.
love
Totty,
it.
totty.
Potty. Yes, so I do the work, and I go to therapy, and even if I don't need to, I have this wonderful therapist, and she's a psychiatrist, but she's very based in meditation.
Good.
She understands the scientific
Balance.
power of it. But Dad's ex-partner, the fiancé, the fifth one, she's a psychiatrist, and she led her to me because she
Oh.
goes into the women's hospital in Melbourne, and she helps women that can't bond with their children. So she was the perfect
Oh my gosh.
match for me because my mother
Match made
didn't
in
bond
heaven.
with me
Fifth
because
time
she
lucky
was...
Yes.
for Brian.
Yeah, it's unlucky for us, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
For you, ultimately.
So-
Wow.
So she understood that my mother had left when I was still in her body. She was already planning her escape. She wasn't happy, so she didn't bond with the baby. So it's been explained to me what happens when there's no bonding, and I had to get in touch with that stuff, and she was the perfect woman. The teacher will come when the student's ready.
A little bit about your dad, though, too, because he was absolutely.
He was very
He was a native mum, and I lived in
girl.
Melbourne.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, when I was PR for the old Melbourne Hotel.
That was the hotel at the time.
I know, it's so
You
not
stayed
now,
in
but
there.
it was then. My God, I went by horse and carriage to the Melbourne Cup from the old Melbourne, but I met
Yes, horse and
Brian.
carriage,
He was opening the underground he had, but he had another one he opened.
Redheads as well. Remember
Redheads
that one?
was later.
But anyway,
Well, I
he
was there.
I
She was
adored
there,
him. He was a
exactly.
cool cat, your
Yeah.
dad.
Yeah,
Really
he was
a
very,
cool
very
cat.
cool, but
Yeah.
very
Charismatic.
charismatic, very handsome.
Yes.
Women loved him
Very much so,
clearly.
yes.
And
I'm sure I
said-
didn't fall on him one night.
Well, he's,
he was the number one man, like in Melbourne. Like
he was very
he'd
cool.
Be
He
there,
brought the
100
whole
people around him.
He brought the nightclub industry to Australia,
He
so
did,
he was
yeah.
like the doyen of the
Correct.
nightclub industry.
Yes.
And he encouraged other people, especially when he had the underground, to bring nightclubs to that strip, so it would be the place to go. And he mentored them, so he was very generous.
Yeah.
You know, he was.
Well, you
but
did say earlier on he's a good person.
he's a good person.
Yeah.
He wasn't intimate. You know, he's
No.
born in the 30s.
And tell us
So-
about how you like the living situation too, because it's quite amazing.
Oh,
too.
we lived.
How's
Look, we
this?
went from
All the
each
kids.
wife. There was another house and another school
It's
and another
fascinating.
child.
There's
and
a
another.
book in that.
What
Yeah,
the?
totally,
And
yes.
then actually his third wife, we didn't even know he'd married her until I'm leaving the house. We're living at like this kibbutz in South Yarra. And Dad, I'm walking in, and Dad's walking out in a suit, and I go, "What are you going to court?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, I am." I go, "Why?" He goes, "To get divorced." I said, "To who?" So he had married Mara, his
What a
third
great
wife. They had 3
conversation.
children, had no idea.
Wow,
Isn't
that's
it?
that is
So,
wild. What
talk
a
about-
Talk about not
right.
oversharing,
I know.
Dad.
But isn't it funny too? Sometimes is it like with the parents that you have, and then the people that you have, and then like with relationships too. Is it sort of like from that you look for a certain type because you've got a father who's like that?
Yeah.
Do you did you find that, Tottie, or?
Interesting.
Yeah, when
that
I
with
was
parents,
younger,
yeah.
I seemed to pick really good men.
Yeah.
And then I dated a guy for 10 years before I got married. And Stevie, my ex-husband, is a really good guy. But he was the one that made me deal with my mother. I didn't realise it at the time because there were no mobile phones. We had a baby. He would go away and say, "I'll be back in a couple of days." And it would be a couple of weeks. And then he was constantly not there, which triggered
Understandably.
that part of me, and my father wasn't there emotionally. So I kept attracting what I needed to heal. And that went right
Yes,
through
that's amazing.
to a lot of relationships. And there's a self-worth thing in there. So I had boundaries in my head, but I couldn't exercise them because of self-worth. And so I had to really constantly work. And then when I learned how to have healthy boundaries, the men I'd chosen couldn't stand it because there was always a bit of a narcissistic streak in them. Very often. I shouldn't say always,
No.
often.
Yeah.
And they can't, and I'm very gentle. I'm not tough.
No, you are.
I'm just
You
a
are.
gentle kind of
So
person.
it says, listen, she has a very beautiful, doesn't
Yes,
she,
yeah,
Nicola?
totally.
Just a very, because we were just in Melbourne with Tottie at the Olivia Newton-John Wellness Centre. Charity walk. And
Just in the
I remember
80s
just
gear.
standing next to you. It was a big day. You were on fire. You had to be everywhere and do a lot. And I thought, you're so calm. You just have great energy. And as Nicola was just saying, retrospectively, the work you've done, it is to be honoured. Because there's a lot of people walking around now in denial of the shit they're carrying, so to speak.
I think people will numb it with drugs and alcohol.
Correct.
I've done that too.
Correct.
After the hold-up, I would
Yep.
literally be awake 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and I was taking shots of scotch to try and help me sleep or take the
I
edge
think all
off
of
the
us would be.
feeling.
Ah.
And we've all gone through stages
Yeah.
of whether it's extreme exercise or food or drugs, alcohol or work. We're all guilty about not dealing with our feelings, and I think women are taught to communicate as we do, listen to us. Men aren't, and I think men suffer with that a whole lot more. And so there's a thing with raising little boys, we need to say, how do you feel? How did it make you feel? And little girls, so what do you think? The girls by nature feel, boys by nature think, and that's a really great way to balance
What a
them.
beautiful thing to say.
Talking about relationships, bingo, it just hit me.
Whoa.
Hold on a sec. You two dated the same guy.
Oh, did we?
No. Hold on, am I right? You guys.
Interesting.
Who was that time?
Well, hold on, let me scratch my head.
Do you know what?
Richard Wilkins, you both dated him, is that right?
And when I met
right.
Nicola the first time,
Nicola.
when I met Nicola the first time, it was backstage at a John Stevens concert.
Yeah.
And we met, and she looked me right into the eyes and had this incredible warmth.
Oh, she does.
And I said to my girlfriend Eloise, I said, Richard's met a really good,
Oh.
really good person.
that's so
She's
nice
a
to
real,
hear.
she's a woman. She's secure. Because he had other girlfriends that literally wouldn't look me in the eye.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
for what? I'm
Wow.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was nothing about me. It
No.
was about them, or if he'd planted something in the head.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
just
you chose
thought,
two beautiful women.
I
That's
thought,
what
what
I
an
know.
amazing one. I was really happy for him. So I was really disappointed when you guys didn't work
Oh,
out.
thank you. Thank you. It was funny because I knew that you went out with Richard, and when we did meet backstage, I was just excited to meet you.
Yes.
And and I just instantly
It's
thought the
typical
same
Nicola, though.
thing.
Yeah.
And I had to say that too with all of Richard's ex-wives and girlfriends and things like that. I adored them all. There was never an issue. And
That's your
He
nature,
chooses
though.
women well.
Yeah,
I have to be
so
honest,
he
from what I know
does.
of you, Tottie,
It's just
what I
yeah.
know a lot about you, you are both very beautiful, kind human beings. So he gets a big tick for choosing women like you.
I
truly.
think that's
Yeah.
true, and I think too also the gifts you get also from growth too, and what you learn, and I think from every relationship that you've had, and there's also we certainly had a great time for a period of time, and I'm sure you did for a period of time too. But it's interesting when things sort of finish and you move on, and how you just then sort of go, wow. I think it's really good to say when you've done a lot of self-work and you look at the things that you like and that you don't want again, and and it's the gifts of growth that you can get.
So true.
And what did I learn from this relationship?
Yes, and that's
But
very
I do
right,
remember.
what you just said.
I do remember when Liv first met him. We were in Sydney.
When Olivia first met Richard, that's going back a fair way, isn't
Well,
it?
when I was
Well,
dating
it was
him.
through you, yes,
Oh,
yes, yeah.
so when are we talking? What era? Like
was the
90s, early
90s.
Okay, the early 90s,
That's how
got
we
it.
met
Yeah,
through.
got it.
through Tottie, yes,
Mid
yeah.
to late 90s.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
97,
Period of
around
time,
there.
yes, yeah.
So
Okay.
we're in the lift going up, and I had Layla and he had Kristen and Liv. He got out of the lift holding the hands of the two kids and walked ahead of us, and Liv said, "You've fallen in love with your father."
Yeah. Oh, she nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad had a lot of marriages, a lot of relationships.
It's getting a bit hot here. Take the scarf off.
Yeah, it's getting a bit hot in here.
It's getting a little bit hot.
Scarf
Well,
off.
Where are the fans?
the
Okay,
first
yeah,
thing
we
I
need a
said
fan.
too, when you think of the similarities, and it's
wow.
nothing there because it's well documented, and Richard, would know that too. And he's had what 5 children to 4 different mothers, and they're all beautiful children. But there's a lot of similarities, I guess, with the traits, say, of your dad, maybe some of your mum, that you get. And sometimes you subconsciously look for those things too. And I guess it's the same thing when
Subconsciously.
I was like that too, and you
definitely.
get, in the charm and in the whole, those sort of traits there, and a bit of the love bombing and the whole thing. It's kind of really intoxicating, and it's certainly fun.
Well, as you're describing
It's
it, we're all
fun.
going, yeah.
It's fun,
All right.
but you just sort of think, what's the lifespan of something like that unless you do the work? And I think everyone's there. If you're prepared to do the work, things can be so beautiful. But I think it's the richness
And that's a secret,
is,
Nicola, is if you're prepared
and longevity.
to do the
And
work.
you go, has there been ever a history of longevity? I don't know.
Isn't it weird? Bringing up the monster can heal you.
Yeah.
A lot of people
Also,
push it back down.
some people kind of are proud that they've been in a relationship for years and years and years. And to me, it's not a numbers game. It's a connection game.
Yeah.
And they go,
Exactly.
we've never had a fight in 20 years. And all I'm thinking is, well,
Yeah.
you're not fucking honest to each other then.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Like,
Yeah.
you
I
have to
agree.
step into your power and
Yeah.
tell your truth.
Yeah.
Because if you're not confronting things, you're not being really honest, and you're pushing stuff down, and you're diminishing yourself.
I know.
So it's the way you deliver it. And what I do is I'm not good on my feet, because if I get triggered, I just go away and I just let it process and try and understand what made me feel what and what doesn't make me feel. So then I can go to Tim, let's say, and say, Tim, when you said this or did this, it made me feel. And so then he's not feeling attacked.
It's a gift.
He's seeing that I need to say something, and we communicate so well because he's worked on himself.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can do
He
the work,
certainly
but it
has.
can land on deaf ears or not understanding.
That's it.
Who did we interview
Yes, I
that said
think
she
so.
won't
Yes,
date
yes.
someone?
Oh, Terry Cole.
She won't
who's a
date someone
psychotherapist.
unless they've had
Same.
20 years of therapy.
She
And
said,
tell
I
you
don't.
what,
Oh, we
20
laughed.
years is
No,
going
we were
a
like,
bit
she
far.
laughed.
And you know,
She was joking.
she was
But
joking.
she
Yeah.
said, I get it though.
Yeah,
Like
I
literally
want
in a
other.
bar.
It's a
"Hi,
deal breaker."
What's your
She
name?
did
Have
meet
you
a
had
guy.
therapy?
Yeah.
We would laugh your heads off. But I'm telling you the
And I
truth.
tell you what, I put my hand
Well,
up
what the
again
shit?
for that because I'm certainly open for love again.
Yes.
But it has to be with sort of someone who will do the work. You know.
And you've got to
you know,
step up
and
too.
I'll do the work myself.
Well, it's got to
because-
work both ways.
Both
Correct.
ways.
And, you know, and it's
Well
teamwork
said.
there and communication. And
Yeah,
look,
and
you know,
Terry's done a lot of
and
work,
everything
yeah.
in life is a bit of a gift because you learn from everything. And, you know,
It's
and a
true.
lot of it's grateful. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of gratitude that we've got, you know,
Yeah.
and in relationships too, where you grow from it. But it is, Tony, I think, you know, we're so aligned that way that it's those things of that you do need to communicate. And it's as they say, it's the power of the pause. Because, you know, you can be very reactive.
Yeah.
And then you might go, oh, you know, shouldn't have said that then. But if what you're doing is you're sort of like holding in, working yourself, and then when it's the right time or the right way, saying something. And it's a great
I
way to
don't
be.
think you can wait for the right time. I think there's no such thing. I think it's when
There's
you've
the
worked
present.
out.
Yes.
Okay, when he or she did this,
Mm.
what did it make me feel? It made me feel, oh, that. And then just go to that person with a cup of tea or coffee, or just go, have you got a minute?
Mm.
When you finish doing that, have you got a minute? I just want to share something.
Yeah.
And share it as something for the betterment of the relationship.
Yeah.
Because especially when
Yes.
we're older, we're going to come with not just baggage, it's life experiences and the way that we make the bed
I
and the
love
way that
that.
we go shopping and the food that we eat, and, you know, everything, the way we perceive the world. And so it's not going to be perfect, but what you learn when you really care about each other is how can we find a place in the middle that works for both of us. And it's
And there's
beautiful.
personal
It's so
growth
true.
for the relationship, but also individually
have,
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
think
that's where it's
have those
gold.
deep, sometimes uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
Which I think when
Well,
people are
it's
afraid
true.
to have
Yeah.
uncomfortable
It is true.
conversations, or as you
Yeah.
said, or they numb themselves, or sort of go back to knee-jerk
Yeah.
things there.
Yeah.
It'll stay at a surface level, and there's not much you can do about
No.
that. You
No.
know, and some things are as they are, and
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about radical acceptance, and you know, so you sort of, you know, so it's one of those things there. You certainly learn and you grow.
Do you know my favourite line,
know.
just quickly, is what we resist will persist.
That's
my
True.
favourite
It
line.
is,
I've
it
got it
is.
written in my bedroom, and I look at it and I'm, right, bring it to the fore, bring it to the fore.
Now, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Kathy Letts said
Yeah.
60s. We're
Yes.
all in our 60s. How do you feel, Tottie?
Yeah,
feel
great.
great.
That's a great way to finish.
I feel
that.
great. Look, I've got bits of me that hurt.
Yeah.
My hips are shot. I used to just run in those days. They were like pretty much volleys and dancing, and I've got some war wounds, but I feel really content in myself. I just will never give up on working on myself. I know myself. I feel really happy in the world, and I deal with things, and I feel having the courage to deal with things and tell someone how you truly deeply feel and have that courage has given me so much freedom. And then to be with somebody where it lands well and you can discuss it is a gift on top. But I was happily single too.
Oh, yes.
So I really like my own company.
So
but
does
that,
age
my
mean
dog
anything
helps
to
there.
you? Like, if
It
someone
means
says, how old
wisdom.
are you? Do you go,
I-
oh.
Do you know what?
I'm in
I
my
think
you know,
I think because my mother lied about her age so much,
Right.
I kind of really have an issue with that.
Right.
And so I'm just like, you know, I was born in
Hey.
62. It's
And
like
I'm
no
proud of
Born
biggie.
in
it. Yeah.
64, and I
Yeah.
got to say,
And I'm proud of
I'm
it, she
so
says.
and I'm
Yeah.
proud of being 60, and I hope that you know,
I
it's
just,
always too. You
I
can
just
sort of
think
be-
it's but a number.
be all-
To me, it just
How
is
do
what
you
it
feel?
is.
As you've said
Yes.
3 times
Yeah.
on in this interview.
How do you
How
feel?
do you feel?
The only
about-
thing about being 60 is I've had to put on my makeup differently, and I YouTube it. And I look up what's the best makeup for older skin that doesn't sit in lines. That's the only real difference.
Let's hear about, because we had to
Except
it
the
was-
odd
it was
hair
fun.
on the
We were
chinny
in
chin.
Melbourne.
Oh yeah.
Only a few
At the
weeks
lights.
ago in our 80s gear to the Let's Get Physical,
Oh, it's
Olivia
fabulous.
Newton-John Wellness Centre. You now are the queen of it, really.
Well,
So
I'm Goodwill
You're
Ambassador.
everywhere.
Tell us-
And can I just say thank you so much for flying down to Melbourne to come to that. It
Oh,
meant the
pleasure.
world.
And
We're
thank you
all
for our
about
listeners
that.
too, who
Yeah.
also supported as well, because we're right behind it. We're going
Yep.
to put the links on this show note as well to
Definitely.
support it, because we're
Yeah.
huge supporters of it, and we're right behind you. So do you want to tell us a little bit
just
about
a
it?
little
Well,
quick
I'll tell you a little
synopsis.
bit about
Yes.
it. Okay, I'm going to start with the reason why people should support Olivia.
Yeah.
And although it's a Melbourne-based wellness centre, is because she gave globally. And this she gave in her music, and she gave in her films, and she gave in her, philanthropic with animals and the planet. And she wanted a place that represented cancer patients in a different way. They're the whole body, mind and
holistic
spirit.
approach. I love
Holistic
it.
approach.
Healthy.
She was a trailblazer, and people are starting to copy this, which is brilliant. And we don't get support from the government. We totally rely on people to keep her vision going. She knew in 2018 it was going to be her last walk, and she said, Plonka, I'm passing you the baton. And I went, I know.
Huge.
And I'd been working with
Pick it
her.
and go, "Ugh."
I went, wow, that's heavy.
That's heavyweight.
And,
My God.
The first walk, we narrowed everything down. We used to have balls and all that kind of stuff, but we've narrowed it down to the walk. And the first walk without her was 2 months after she had passed.
Oh.
And it was this gaping hole, and there was so much love there and emotion, and just thousands of people just there for her.
And Chloe, her daughter. 2 weeks
She's
ago,
come
she
to the
was
last
so
two,
supportive,
and
yeah.
it is
It was
so
beautiful.
good for
The way
her.
she spoke was cathartic.
And we've got each other. And we are
see
so,
that.
You held her the
we're
whole
more
time.
bonded than we've ever been.
Olivia
see
did
it.
it for you. You're doing it for Chloe.
See?
Oh, tears.
Full circle.
Oh, my
I mean
God,
it.
it's true.
No,
Really,
I know,
I mean
and
that.
do you know what?
You can
I
see
wasn't
it, you can
allowed to
feel-
say
I know
this
you can
at Liz
feel it.
Memorial, but I wanted to finish it with, and I was told by a family member that I couldn't say this, and I wanted to say, Chloe, the love that your mum gave us, we circle back to you.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I felt.
I know.
But I wasn't allowed to say it because whoever said this to me said the memorial is not about Chloe, and I thought, well, yes, it is. So we have such our
She's the
connection has
legacy,
gone
isn't
boom, like this, and so I feel that I'm her mother heart now. She calls me mama.
Mother Heart as well.
Time, Paul, favourite Olivia Newton-John song?
Mine, well, I've got two. I have to say, let's get physical because I loved
Yeah,
it getting in the
you
80s.
did.
Yeah, and then I love you. I honestly,
Honestly
love
love
you.
you,
It
yeah.
brings tears and
Mine's
emotion.
Xanadu. Xanadu.
Oh, that's why.
It's my
Come
favourite.
on,
What about
Diane.
you?
I've just
Of
been
course.
doing touring with Hopelessly Devoted, which
Yes.
which I host.
With-
We
is
just came
David
back from
Campbell?
Singapore.
No.
David Campbell,
Yeah,
I
right,
do a
yeah.
duet with him.
How was
Yeah.
it?
Let Me Be There. Oh, it was great. When
Nice.
David sings I Honestly Love You, I'm side of stage and I'm just like choked.
Oh, my
Whereas that was never my
God.
favourite song. And
Wow.
also I was never a fan. I was a family.
Of
She
course
was
not, yes.
family. Everything I do to do with Olivia, like this show, money goes back into the Wellness Centre.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, again,
Yeah.
full circle.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Quick,
See,
quick,
it's goodness
quick
in your
couple
heart.
questions.
Yeah, goodness in your heart.
You go
Okay,
first.
Tottie, we're
Uh-oh.
going to our signature questions. I think Di's got one to surprise you with.
I do.
If you
It's
could
beautiful.
share a back fence with anybody on planet Earth, who
Like
would
what
it
you
be?
girls are doing?
You know, yeah. Who? Anyone could share a back fence. with
Visualise
anybody,
the back
past or
fence,
present.
and you're hovering
Who
on
would
the
it
branch
be?
above, or you're sitting there
Yvonne
with
Bibra.
Oh.
Yvonne Bibra was in the Chantoozies.
Tell us why.
Do you know what? When you
Wow.
work with
Totally.
somebody and
Yes.
tour with somebody, you get to know them really, really,
Yes.
really well.
So you're good
Love
friends
that.
now.
Yeah, and Angelica, like,
Yes, yeah.
to sit here, we do this. We talk, we finish each other's
Right.
sentences,
Yeah.
we know each other so well. But
Chicks on fire.
I do have that with actually a handful of girlfriends. How lucky are we?
I know.
Oh, yeah.
How lucky are we with
Instantly connect.
our
Blessed.
sisters.
Oh, yes.
Like,
It's
wow.
like a sisterhood.
Yeah.
And those ones that you trust them with
Oh.
every part of your life.
Every
Yep.
bit.
Safe.
Yes. We're going to get you back on because I want to do a Chantoozies whole throwback
Totally.
to the 80s.
And
It's
we
so
want the
much
sex-
fun too.
sex-
I want the
everything
sex,
else.
everything
We
else.
will
But
get
that's
you back.
another episode.
Part 2, last question. What makes you happy?
Sitting here talking, chewing the fat with interesting women. I love this. This is
Wow.
beautiful. I'm curious. I love sharing
It's the
stories.
greatest gift.
Yeah, communication.
Our imagination, curiosity.
Yeah,
Wow.
yep, and connection.
Oh, Tottie, that is
Yes.
so beautiful. Look, just to let our
Yes.
listeners know, we always have the question. We're going to shoot it with you, and then we're just going to actually sort of drop it for a while and keep the happy one. But seeing you're here, and we just want to get as much out of you as you can because you're so beautiful. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Trust your gut.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, most people go around
You,
that.
Tottie,
Gut knows. Your head gets on top of
Beautiful.
it. Just
You
gotta
have
trust
been
that.
the joy, and everyone, I'm
Fabulous.
sure, and that
Loved
sort of
every
thing.
second of
So
it.
many gifts of friendship, surrender.
I feel like I actually read the book.
A
We
bit
started with the
a
book.
bit of
opened the
juicy
page.
love life thrown in. I mean, you've got to have a bit of fun in life, don't you? You know. So, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
and listeners,
girls.
thank you for
Beautiful.
listening. And don't forget to rate, share, and review. And this one,
What's the number for Angel?
1. But let's put
Yeah.
a 5
11.
Because I want everyone to vote 11 out of 5, isn't it? Because that's Olivia's The Angel flying
And
above
if you
you
want
all.
DM us your
Yeah.
favourite
Oh, wait, I never do
Olivia
5 out of
Newton-John
5.
song. We want to know. And,
Yes.
and also we want you back, Tottie. Back to our back friends. And nothing like
Part
friendship.
2. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Love you. Bye.
Okay, bye.